I've got some other stuff I wanted to cover today, time permitting. One of them is that I don't know if you caught this. You probably don't pay as much of attention to this type of thing as I do, but Rick Singer, who was the college advisor to Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman and a bunch of other top 1% type people, and convicted of uh, helping their kids get into colleges by lying, bribing, and photoshopping and doing all sorts of other stuff. He had a whole scheme where they would make a donation to his charitable enterprise, and then in turn he would kick over some or all of those funds to various universities, including Yale, including USC, including University of San Diego, etc. And typically it was under the guise of athletic recruiting. So that's why you had this photoshopping of Lori Loughlin's kids rowing and getting recruited to USC for rowing, even though the guidance counselor was fielding phone calls from the athletic department of USC and wondering, wait a minute, I didn't know these guys rowed. And there was water polo, photoshopping, all sorts of other stuff. What Rick Singer did was manufacture a side door into these colleges by bribing, in most cases, the coaches of the sailing team at Stanford, although apparently he didn't take any money. But the soccer coach at Yale and a few other key athletic department people at various colleges. Okay, so the news about him recently, I saw this last week, was that I guess a judge ruled that it was okay for him to go back into the college advising business after doing his time, and which I think he already was, by the way. So that part wasn't news to me, but with the proviso that he has to disclose on his website very prominently, his circumstances, that he went to jail, he was convicted of I guess it was wire fraud technically, and some of other related types of sketchy things. So so I thought that was a great marketing plan for him. Hire me. It's like all those disclaimers on TV. When you see the various medicines, they talk about what the benefits to the medicine. Maybe they're singing and dancing, and then the disclaimer about how Jardine, whatever it is, may cause death, all sorts of other stuff. And those disclaimers are like 20 minutes. Well, they're like maybe 60% of the commercial. So I don't think it's going to stop him. I actually I had occasion to meet him years ago, and reputationally I understood that he actually was, I think, a decent college advisor before he went to the dark side and started concocting ways to get kids into schools that they didn't belong at. So I thought that was interesting, and combined with here locally in New York, you've got a mayoral candidate, Zoran Mandami, the Democratic Socialist, who somehow his application to Columbia was leaked. They can't find the Epstein files, but they can find this guy's college application, and he checked off that he was African American. And you look at him, he's clearly not, which offended a lot of actual African American candidates. He applied to Stanford. He checked off that box, which if you don't understand how college admissions works, at least worked back then, there are certain categories of people who apply who are favored types of statuses, like they get their little thumb on the scale to boost their chances of admission. So a lot of that came out in a lawsuit a couple years ago against Harvard before their current lawsuits by the Trump administration. And this one was a lawsuit that was filed by and on behalf of an Asian American students who had, I think, perfect SAT scores and amazing academic credentials and all sorts of other top quality indicia of how well he could do in college, and he didn't. He got rejected flat out. Whereas kids with lesser grades and lesser scores did get in. So that was the basis of the lawsuit, that it was discriminatory and it violates the Equal Protection Clause and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And so that was that was adjudicated and outlawed affirmative action. That was a couple years ago. But what I was getting at is Harvard released its admissions officer handbook into evidence, which was very interesting, at least to me, that denoted all of the categories that they should be on the lookout for. So I think it was, to the best of my recollection, 10 or 12 pages, and about 80% of the handbook was devoted to non-academic components. So if you were a recruited athlete, you got a thumb on the scale. If you were an underrepresented minority, visual minority, that was also a special tag or select. Admissions officers in different colleges call them by different names. If you were a legacy, that's big at Harvard. Your parents went there. That's a special category where you also get a boost. Not a rubber stamp, by the way. If you are the son or daughter of faculty, you get a little thumb on the scale. So these are all sort of special favorite classes at every competitive college, not just Harvard, that that serve to skew things. The best guess that I've come up with based on my research and experience is that in most of these colleges, anywhere from 50 to 80% of the spots at these colleges are reserved for these special categories. So that means if you're looking at the average GPA, average SAT, or average ACT, and you're not one of these special categories, and you think, okay, I think I have a decent shot, you really don't, as much as you might think, because those special categories tend to have lesser grades and scores. So that's just the way it is. I'm not saying this to be politically incorrect or anything. What was interesting to me, as a side note on the whole Zoran story about how he lied, or at least stretched the truth. His explanation was that something like he identified. He didn't say that exactly, but he identified as African American. That was part of his. He didn't have one box to check off that represented him truly. But basically, I think anyone with common sense would think that he lied, which to me doesn't disqualify him to be a mayor, I think, or any politician, right? I think it might actually help qualify him. But what's interesting to me is that he was not only checking off that box, but he's also, at the time he applied, he was the son of a professor there. So he had two potential hooks or two potential special tags to get in, and he still didn't get in, probably because his grades weren't quite there. His SAT, I think, for Columbia was on the low side. I think it was in the 1400s, which is a great score. But when you're competing at the highest level, Ivy and near Ivy schools, you really need to be in the low to mid 1500s, I think, to be near that median. So even he didn't get in, despite checking off the box and having faculty as a parent. So that's why I was saying it's not like it's a rubber stamp to get into these colleges, but the special categories help. Now, of course, it's different. Now the deal is that when the common application comes out August 1st, which is about a week or so away from today, there are still boxes to check about how you identify. I haven't seen them yet. I just haven't looked for them. But I'm sure there'll be boxes on gender and race, ethnicity, and all that. But now, apparently, I believe this. Apparently, the colleges cannot download that information. That's really more for like government monitoring information or college board monitoring type of information. So things are changing that way too. Oh, here comes Pearl. Okay.
Sorry, I'm late.
Mic up. So things are are still the goal. They're still the same in the sense that colleges still have goals of adding a diverse class, to adding diversity to their incoming classes, but they're not necessarily going to be doing that by asking you to check off a box and seeing that information. What they are going to be doing which they started last summer, and now we're starting to see this again this summer as they dribble out their supplemental essays. What they are doing is asking questions about community and all that, type of ways to back into race and ethnicity and things like that. But not every college, So I've seen a few colleges that changed their supplemental essays from last year's, maybe in response to the cutting of DEI or the de-emphasis of DEI programs. So one of the ones I just saw a couple weeks ago was University of Michigan released its supplemental essays, and last year they had one about community and tell us about your lived experiences and stuff like that. And now they don't. So I'm curious what's going to happen, but diversity is still a major goal at pretty much every college. And interestingly, since the Supreme Court came down with its ruling declaring affirmative action unconstitutional, some colleges have reported a decrease in diversity, and some have reported an increase in diversity, possibly because of these essay topics, or who knows. So it's not a done deal that the Supreme Court has caused a decrease in diversity. In fact, most of the non-elite colleges, the 98% of colleges out there, including most state universities, happen to be pretty diverse already. So it was always kind of befuddling to me why that was such a big deal. But maybe at Harvard, wherever apparently a lot of people try to get in, maybe it was a bigger deal there. Okay, so Pearl, welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody.
I'm going to be asking you for one of those 5 things you did last week, my mouse. No, I'm not. Did you make us coffee?
I did not have time to make us coffee this morning because I was speaking to a Newsday reporter about the new New York Universal FAFSA policy, which has gone into effect.
Is that the sole basis? Is that the only thing you talked about? Or were there other financial things you talked about?
We ended up talking about everything and its mother.
So let's do this. I'll get over the fact that you didn't make us coffee.
Thanks.
So talk briefly about the New York law, and then talk a little bit more about your the other changes that you guys discussed.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about maybe you get ready for the show ahead of time before you do the interview, instead of cleaning up after our daughter's graduation party and rearranging furniture and whatever else. The other 25 things you do before
laundry, dishes,
yeah,
garbage takeout. Yeah. You did that this morning. Yeah. Okay. Sure, our listeners are very interested in this. All right. So the New York State Universal FAFSA Policy Act requires high school seniors to complete the FAFSA. Its goal is to increase college enrollment by making financial aid more accessible. If a student doesn't want to provide information, it doesn't want to complete the FAFSA, they will have to now affirmatively waive this requirement by acknowledging they have awareness of financial aid and awareness of the FAFSA, et cetera, awareness of what aid is available to them. Why is it happening? Because about $225 million of federal aid in New York State was left unclaimed by qualifying people, students and parents.
How did they figure that out?
I honestly have no idea.
Sorry.
But this statistic is from the Higher Education Services Board, HESC, the institution that puts out the TAP. This is New York State.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in terms of implementing this, school districts are going to be at the helm of, they're going to be responsible for compliance of bringing this awareness of the financial aid form. I don't know what, all right, the high school is going to be responsible for implementing this.
Are they going to force people to file?
Well, if you don't want to file, you have to affirmatively waive it and acknowledge that you've been made aware of financial aid.
So it's like a whole privacy thing.
Exactly.
A lot of our clients don't like giving their information.
Then you can waive it. Yeah. So there's an immediate cure to that. But nonetheless, this is assuming everyone reads the fine print. So some families maybe who would not otherwise wanted to have provided this information may feel forced to provide this, because now it's like your high school's telling you have to do this, you may not graduate, whatever.
So you may not graduate
No,
if you don't
I
file?
don't know what the consequences
Okay.
are of
Okay,
neither completing the FAFSA or
right.
the waiver.
So they're forcing people to apply for aid with the new FAFSA, which was, I guess it was okay last year, but 2 years ago it was awful. Who knows what's going to be like
And
this
the
year.
irony, the new FAFSA was released under the FAFSA Simplification Act. I love the ironies that exist. So now, and what's very unsimple about it is now you're making it a requirement. The FAFSA itself requires the student to do one application, the parent to do another. And if you don't know those two things, your FAFSA is not going to be successfully filed. So my concerns in putting the onus of the school districts to provide this information, like if it's just a matter of, if this policy was enacted to provide this information at like, hey, fill your FAFSA out, and that's the extent of the information, then I think it's wasteful, unnecessary, whatever, because anytime a student applies to a school, they are barraged with emails about financial aid at that school. They embed the site for the financial aid right in the school's email that you get from the college you're applying to. So there is not a lack of awareness that way. There may be a serious lack of awareness of how to complete this form. There may be a serious lack of awareness of what information goes into this form. There may be a serious lack of awareness that there are other forms to complete at many of the schools you're going to be applying to.
Well, and that's one of your pet peeves with these
Yep,
financial aid
and that is one of the things I aired with my reporter.
Okay.
Right. So the
So you're-
timing. So
you're gonna
here's
be
the other thing. So
you're gonna
high
be really
schools are now
popular.
currently remiss, in my opinion, in when and how they administer their financial aid nights.
You're going to be so popular with high schools.
I reiterated that it is not about those employed as guidance counselors per se. What it does lie within is their training in this area. I'm not holding them responsible, but if this is going to be an awareness of the financial aid that's available to you is now put on these guidance counselors, there is going to be a very steep learning curve here because they don't know anything that the parent knows or does. Maybe they know a little bit more, but they're not trained in this area.
Well, one of the things I've always heard you say, and I've heard this from our clients too, is they bring in a speaker who's from like a local college, and he may know a little bit about the FAFSA, but they'll say something that you're not going to qualify, and we don't bother. But if you're applying to, a lot of kids that we know apply to private, sort of harder to get into aspirational schools, which usually require at least a CSS profile, which never gets discussed,
or
as well as their own institutional forms. Or
and I'll give you an example of where, okay. So who it's designed? It's truly designed to benefit maybe those families who really are unaware. Maybe there's going to be more of an awareness for those kids, but again, I'm concerned with what's going to comprise that awareness. Are they going to share the mechanics of how to file that FAFSA? Are they going to be there to help guide them with all the post-filing requirements, which I typically say the filing of the forms is the start of the process. And then what's going to happen is the school you've now applied to will be triggered to prepare a financial aid package for that student. And then they're going to have to send additional documents and other things. Is the school going to guide that student on what documents and where to find them? And they're not financial experts.
Well, and then you've got all the cuts at the Department of Education. So,
the
customer service there has been notoriously awful. I can't imagine it being better this year for people who are trying to file with questions.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So on its face, it seems great. I'm all for benefiting a population of people who would have otherwise received aid and didn't. Perhaps it's also those who, and I don't know how this is going to fix this, because let's say you have a high income, we had this past year, a high income earner who who was never going to qualify for aid. So there's no way he was going to complete financial aid forms, and they were just focused on admission. And this student applied to and got into Fordham. And the family was like, I'm surprised he's at the top of his class. Like, why didn't he get any merit money? Guess what? Guess what? The filing of the FAFSA and the financial aid forms is a prerequisite at some schools, including Fordham, NYU off the top of my head, that in order to be considered for merit, irrespective of what the parent's earning is. So, income is. So maybe some of this unclaimed funds are a bunch of people who otherwise have the money and then just left a lot of merit money on the table. I'm not sure. But hopefully, this is
probably need-based aid that they're somehow backing into, conjecturing.
But I'm not sure. It doesn't say that.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I hope it does benefit the class of people. They are the low-income families that are not getting aid, who really are entitled to it and haven't or eligible for it. I should
there's
say.
a lot of people who try to apply. They think they did, but because it's like a two-step process with all these verifications and IDs, it's very complicated.
Very.
Just to sign it, not just
Right.
filling it out. Filling it out is hard enough.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
So here's the irony of just their, oh, we're providing this loving information for you. But here's the problem.
What is that?
Because on its face, it seems like, oh, they're helping everyone out. They're making us aware because they want us to, save money. And that's hopefully true for whatever. But the big, beautiful bill that was passed, and in terms of those provisions that apply to student and parent educational loans, you can fill out all the forms you want, but what's changing is the amount that parents can borrow. So right now, students are fixed at what they can borrow each year. $5,500 freshman year, $6,500 sophomore year, $7,500 for each additional undergraduate year thereafter that one needs to complete. Is $7,500. The parent, alternatively, can borrow either whatever dollar amount or, quote, up to the cost of attendance as determined by the school. So that's everything. Room, board, tuition, fees. So for example, at Cornell University costs $95,000 a year. The student, and if you're in an income place that you're not qualifying for any need-based aid, Cornell's not a merit offering school. Your income's too high, but you may not have saved that $95,000 a year to pay Cornell, or I'm sorry, $90,000 after the student loan. So the parent can borrow that $90,000 each year for 4 years right now to satisfy that bill. Under the new big, beautiful bill, parents will be capped at $65,000 total borrowing per student for their entire undergraduate career. So that is like under $20,000 a year that the parent can borrow. How else are they going to pay for the rest of what's owed to Cornell up to $95,000 after that $20,000 of borrowing?
Or maybe they don't go to Cornell.
Maybe you don't go to Cornell.
Right. You go to Binghamton.
Right. Because
which will be a lot harder to get into probably because a lot of people are going to be making those choices.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
We shall see. But I wanted to bring it to you here first.
Okay. We got a question about this new mandate from New York State. Is there any, do you know if there's any funding that goes along with this mandate in terms of hiring people to?
Right now,
it's a free filing. The FAFSA is free.
It's my understanding that representatives from New York State colleges, SUNY system, are going to be going to the high schools to assist with this.
Okay, well, that's going to be mixed.
Right.
Some will be competent and some will be others.
Less competent.
Yeah, good. All right, great. Well, thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure. Sorry I was late, everybody.
Yeah, it's okay. The fourth estate. You don't think it was like a hit piece on us?
I kept asking her. I was like, I got 4 kids.
Yeah, good.
I eat a lot.
You're quite thin. So that's a wrap for this week's College Coffee Talk. We will be back next week, but as always, you can listen to this or watch this on replay on YouTube. You can listen to it on our top 5 college planning podcast show, the College Admissions Edge on Spotify. It's either number 2 or number 5, depending on what random search
Google
we
it.
do.
Google it.
Yeah.
Google it today and help us move up the ladder.
It doesn't help us move up, but you can listen to it, you can rate it, you can subscribe so you don't miss out on. We do post other things besides this live show that we do every Monday, all over the place. So don't miss out. Thanks a lot for spending time with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.